In 1492, Christopher Columbus set sail with one aim: to find a faster route to India. But when he landed on the shores of a vast new world, he had no idea what awaited him. Little did he know that this discovery would forever change the course of history. When Columbus arrived in what we now call the Americas, he assumed he had reached India, a land famous for its spices and treasures. To him, the people he encountered were clearly from the same distant region. Thus, he called them Indios, Indians in Spanish. The term Indian wasn't just a passing reference. It became entrenched in European thought. Columbus, now convinced that he had found a new path to India, continued to use the term for the indigenous peoples he met. The name spread rapidly across Europe, leaving a legacy that would be hard to shake. The notion of India became synonymous with the New World in the minds of Europeans. As explorers from other countries made their way across the continent, they too referred to the native populations as Indians, further cementing the label. But there was one crucial issue. They were not Indians. As European settlers began to establish colonies in the Americas, they brought their languages, customs, and assumptions with them. The term Indian continued to spread through the colonies, despite the clear evidence that these peoples were vastly different from those in Asia. The language barrier between the colonizers and the native peoples made communication difficult, reinforcing the stereotype. Meanwhile, the indigenous peoples of the Americas had their own names, languages, and identities. Yet, in the eyes of the Europeans, the people they encountered were all part of a single Indian category, based on a geographic error. This linguistic misunderstanding laid the groundwork for generations of misidentification. As the centuries passed, the mistaken label of Indian continued to persist in the Western world. It was not simply an error made by Columbus. It was a misconception that became ingrained in the fabric of history. People continued to use the term without questioning its origins, and soon it became a part of global lexicon. The myth of the Indian grew stronger with each passing generation. Even as knowledge about the diversity of the Americas expanded, the term remained stubbornly attached to the continent's indigenous peoples. To many, it seemed like the easiest label to use. But what did this term really mean? As time marched on, the inhabitants of the Americas, now seen as Indians by outsiders, began to face the harsh realities of colonialism. Their land was taken, their cultures were suppressed, and their identities became entwined with the very label that had misidentified them in the first place. Despite the hardships, many indigenous peoples continued to thrive, maintaining their unique languages, customs, and beliefs. However, the widespread use of the term Indian continued to obscure their true identities. Native Americans, as they came to be known, were not a monolithic group. They were, and are, a vast collection of nations with diverse histories, each with its own rich heritage. Early European settlers, particularly the Spanish and the French, had their own reasons for adopting the term Indian. For them, it was easier to categorize the indigenous populations in a single uniform way. This convenience of labeling people by a geographical misconception led to the continued use of the term Indian. The settlers' use of Indian was also tied to a larger colonial agenda. By grouping the indigenous peoples under a single umbrella term, it allowed for easier control and subjugation. The diversity of the native populations was minimized, and their cultures were often viewed through a narrow, one-dimensional lens. Religion played a significant role in how the term Indian was perpetuated. Christian missionaries arrived in America with the intention of converting the indigenous peoples to Christianity. To them, the natives were heathens who needed to be saved. The term Indian became intertwined with this religious mission. The missionaries often saw the native peoples as a blank slate, devoid of culture or belief systems. This misguided view further reinforced the idea that these peoples were homogeneous. In the eyes of the Europeans, their religious and cultural diversity was irrelevant, as long as they could be brought into the Christian fold. As the 19th century unfolded, the use of the term Indian began to spark controversy. Native American leaders, intellectuals, and activists began to speak out against the term and its implications. They argued that it stripped them of their true identities and reduced their rich cultures to a single, erroneous label. This period saw the rise of Native American advocacy groups that pushed for recognition of the diversity within their communities. They rejected the idea that all native peoples could be lumped together under the term Indian. Instead, they advocated for terms that reflected their individual nations and cultures. By the mid-20th century, the term Native American began to gain traction as a more accurate and respectful designation. It recognized the indigenous peoples as the original inhabitants of the Americas and acknowledged their deep connection to the land. The shift away from Indian was part of a broader movement toward greater self-determination for indigenous peoples. However, not all Native Americans embraced the new label. Some preferred the term Indian, as it was still tied to their historical and cultural identity. Others chose to reclaim their specific tribal names such as Navajo or Cherokee to assert their unique identities. The debate over what to call indigenous peoples is far from settled. Some argue that Native American is a term imposed by outsiders and does not reflect the diversity of indigenous cultures. Others believe that it is a step forward in acknowledging the unique status of Native peoples in the United States. As the debate continues, it is important to remember that language is powerful. The words we use to describe people can shape perceptions and influence relationships. The term Indian may have been born from a mistake, but its legacy is still being felt today. In recent years, many people have begun to reconsider the way they use the term Indian. Historians, scholars, and indigenous activists have called for greater awareness of the term's origins and the harm it has caused. They emphasize the importance of using the terms preferred by indigenous communities themselves. This shift in perspective reflects a broader movement toward cultural sensitivity and respect for indigenous peoples. By using terms that reflect the diversity of native cultures, we can begin to undo the damage caused by centuries of misrepresentation. Education plays a critical role in changing how we view the term Indian. In schools and universities, students are now learning about the true history of the Americas and the diverse cultures of its indigenous peoples. This education is essential in fostering a deeper understanding of the complexity of Native American identities. As more people learn about the rich history of indigenous cultures, the more they realize that the term Indian does not do justice to the incredible diversity of these peoples. Education is the key to breaking down the stereotypes and misconceptions that have persisted for centuries. Representation matters in media, literature, and the arts. Native Americans are increasingly reclaiming their stories and identities through films, books, and television shows. They are telling their own stories and challenging the stereotypical images associated with the term Indian. By presenting Native American characters in a variety of roles and contexts, these works help to break down the narrow, one-dimensional view of indigenous peoples that has been perpetuated for centuries. Representation allows Native Americans to define themselves on their own terms, rather than being defined by the mistaken label of Indian. Cultural preservation is vital for indigenous communities. Many Native American nations have worked tirelessly to preserve their languages, traditions, and cultural practices. These efforts are an important part of reclaiming their identity and rejecting the homogenizing effects of the term Indian. By preserving their cultural heritage, Native Americans can assert their unique identity and resist the forces of assimilation. It is through these efforts that they are able to pass down their knowledge, traditions, and stories to future generations, ensuring that their cultures continue to thrive. Technology has become an important tool for Native American communities to reclaim their identities. Through digital media, social platforms, and online forums, indigenous peoples are able to share their stories and connect with others who share their experiences. Technology also provides a platform for education and activism. Native American groups are using the internet to challenge misconceptions about their cultures and to advocate for greater recognition and respect. In the digital age, the power of technology is helping to reshape the narrative about indigenous peoples. The world is changing, and with it, so too are the conversations about the term Indian. As more people become aware of the issues surrounding this term, there is a growing movement to adopt more respectful language. The shift away from Indian is a step toward acknowledging the complexities of Native American identity. The future of indigenous terminology lies in the hands of Native American communities. They are the ones who should decide what terms best reflect their cultures, histories, and identities. The role of non-indigenous peoples is to listen, learn, and respect those choices. The impact of colonization cannot be underestimated. For centuries, the indigenous peoples of the Americas were subjected to violence, displacement, and forced assimilation. The term Indian was just one of the many tools used to erase their identities and reduce them to a stereotype. Colonization has had lasting effects on indigenous communities. The loss of land, culture, and language has left deep scars that are still being felt today. By acknowledging the historical context of the term Indian, we can better understand the challenges faced by Native Americans and the importance of respecting their chosen identities. In recent decades, there has been a resurgence of indigenous activism. Native American groups are taking a stand on issues ranging from land rights to environmental protection. They are challenging the assumptions that have been made about their cultures and identities, including the continued use of the term Indian. This activism is driven by a desire for justice and recognition. Indigenous peoples are fighting for their rights, their voices, and their histories to be acknowledged. The movement for indigenous rights is a crucial part of the broader struggle for equality and respect. It is essential to recognize the diversity of Native American cultures. The term Indian ignores the rich variety of languages, customs, and traditions that exist among different tribes and nations. Each group has its own unique history and identity, which should be acknowledged and respected. By learning about the diversity of Native American cultures, we can begin to appreciate the complexity of their identities. The term Indian fails to capture this diversity, and it is time for a more accurate and respectful approach. Language plays a crucial role in shaping identity. For Native American communities, language is not just a means of communication. It is a key part of their cultural heritage. The loss of indigenous languages has been a devastating consequence of colonization. Many Native American communities are working to revitalize their languages. Language is a powerful tool for cultural preservation and a vital part of reclaiming identity. By supporting efforts to preserve indigenous languages, we can help ensure that these rich cultural traditions are passed on to future generations. Cultural sensitivity is essential when discussing Native American identities. It is important to recognize the differences between various indigenous peoples and to avoid using blanket terms like Indian. Understanding the historical and cultural context of these terms can help foster respect and understanding. Cultural sensitivity also means listening to the voices of Native Americans themselves. They are the experts on their own history and identity, and their preferences should be prioritized. By showing respect for their choices, we can work together to create a more inclusive and understanding society. The term Indian has also been tied to broader issues of race and identity. It has often been used to define Native Americans in opposition to other racial groups. This racialization of indigenous peoples has had profound consequences, influencing how they are viewed and treated by society. Understanding the intersection of race and identity is crucial in addressing the challenges faced by Native Americans. The term Indian is part of a larger system of racial categorization that has marginalized indigenous peoples for centuries. By acknowledging this history, we can begin to address the systemic issues that continue to affect them. Despite the growing awareness of the problems with the term Indian, there is still much work to be done. Many Native American communities continue to fight for recognition and respect, both in terms of their identities and their rights. The struggle for recognition is ongoing, and it will take the collective efforts of both indigenous and non-indigenous peoples to create a more inclusive and respectful society. By supporting Native American communities and advocating for their rights, we can help build a better future for all. Indigenous leaders play a crucial role in shaping the narrative about Native American identity. These leaders are at the forefront of efforts to reclaim indigenous cultures and push for greater recognition of their peoples' histories and contributions. Through their leadership, indigenous peoples are challenging the dominant narrative and working to create a more accurate and respectful understanding of their cultures. Their voices are essential in the ongoing conversation about the use of the term Indian and the recognition of Native identities. Education is key to changing the way we view Native American identities. By learning about the history of indigenous peoples and the harmful effects of the term Indian, we can begin to shift our perceptions and attitudes. Education helps to break down the stereotypes that have been perpetuated for centuries. By teaching students about the true diversity and richness of Native American cultures, we can foster a deeper understanding and appreciation for these communities. Media representation has a powerful impact on how Native Americans are viewed by the public. For too long, indigenous peoples have been portrayed through the lens of stereotypes and misconceptions. The term Indian has played a major role in shaping these representations. In recent years, however, there has been a push for more accurate and respectful portrayals of Native Americans in the media. Native American filmmakers, writers, and artists are taking control of their own narratives and challenging the stereotypes that have long been associated with the term Indian. The arts have long been a powerful tool for reclaiming identity and challenging stereotypes. Through music, dance, theater, and visual art, Native Americans are telling their own stories and sharing their experiences with the world. The arts allow Native Americans to express their cultural heritage and assert their unique identities. By celebrating indigenous art forms, we can help to preserve these traditions and ensure that they continue to thrive. The passing down of knowledge from one generation to the next is a vital part of indigenous cultures. Elders play a crucial role in teaching younger generations about their traditions, language, and history. Intergenerational knowledge is essential for the survival of indigenous cultures. By supporting efforts to preserve this knowledge, we can help ensure that Native American communities continue to thrive and pass on their wisdom to future generations. The road ahead for Native American communities is one of continued struggle and resilience. Despite the challenges they face, indigenous peoples are determined to reclaim their identities and cultures. The journey is far from over, but with the continued efforts of indigenous leaders, activists, and communities, there is hope for a brighter future. It is time to move beyond the outdated and inaccurate label of Indian and embrace the diversity and richness of Native American identities. As we move forward, it is essential to treat Native American communities with respect and understanding. By using the terms and names that these communities prefer, we can begin to heal the wounds caused by centuries of misrepresentation. The legacy of the term Indian is one of misunderstanding and misidentification. It is time for a new chapter in the story of Native American identity, one that honors the true diversity and richness of these cultures and respects the choices of those who continue to live and thrive in the Americas. If you've enjoyed this journey through history and the powerful stories of Native American culture, please show your support by liking, commenting, and sharing this video. Your thoughts mean the world to us, and we love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future stories that dive deep into history, culture, and the voices that need to be heard. Your engagement helps us keep telling these important tales, and together we can keep the conversation going. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey.